Good morning. Welcome to Kenya News Update today. I'm your host. In a significant diplomatic move, Kenya is preparing to host a new round of critical peace talks for South Sudan, scheduled to begin on February 9th. This initiative, dubbed the Tumaini Initiative, aims to break a persistent political deadlock and produce a new charter within just 4 weeks. But can this Kenyan-brokered effort succeed where others have struggled? Today, we dive deep into the high-stakes diplomacy, the complex history, and the competing perspectives on whether this is a genuine breakthrough or another diplomatic gamble. We'll examine the framework, the key players, and what's at stake for regional stability. Let's begin with the announcement itself. According to a 3-page framework document obtained by Radio Tumaini, the talks will commence on February 9th under a Kenyan-led mediation. The objective is clear and ambitious: to produce a national consensus charter for peace and democracy within a 4-week timeframe. This tight deadline is both a sign of urgency and a potential pressure point. The document explicitly acknowledges what many observers have long noted: persistent challenges and outstanding implementation gaps under the 2018 revitalized Agreement on the Resolution of the Conflict in South Sudan, or RARCSS. This admission is crucial. It frames these new talks not as a replacement, but as a necessary intervention to salvage a faltering process. So, what exactly is the Tumaini Initiative? The name, meaning hope in Swahili, is telling. It represents Kenya's attempt to inject fresh momentum into a peace process that has been marred by delays, violations, and a lack of political will. The initiative is structured as an intensive, closed-door negotiation forum, bringing together the main signatories to the 2018 agreement, along with other key political and civil society stakeholders. The goal is to bridge the most contentious gaps, particularly around security arrangements, the transitional justice process, and the timeline for holding national elections, which have been repeatedly postponed. Now, let's consider the timing. Why February 9th? Why this urgent 4-week window? Proponents of the initiative argue that the political situation in South Sudan has reached a critical juncture. The transitional government, a fragile unity arrangement between President Salva Kiir and First Vice President Riek Machar, is straining under the weight of unfulfilled promises. Armed violence continues in several regions, displacing thousands. The humanitarian situation remains dire, with over 2/3 of the population requiring aid. The international community, including key donors and the United Nations, has grown increasingly impatient with the lack of progress. From this perspective, Kenya's move is a preemptive strike against total collapse. They are seizing a moment of heightened international concern to force a breakthrough. However, skeptics offer a different view on the timing. They point to Kenya's own strategic interests in the region. A stable South Sudan is vital for Kenya's economic ambitions, particularly the Lamu Port South Sudan-Ethiopia Transport Corridor project. Continued instability threatens these investments. Furthermore, as a regional powerhouse, Kenya's diplomatic prestige is on the line. Success in Juba would bolster Nairobi's standing as a peacemaker, while failure could be seen as a significant setback. Some analysts suggest the 4-week deadline is less about the complexity of the issues and more about creating a sense of inevitable progress, a diplomatic shock therapy to jolt the parties into agreement. To understand the scale of the challenge, we need to look at the numbers behind the conflict. Since independence in 2011, South Sudan's journey has been tragically defined by war. The civil war that began in 2013 resulted in catastrophic loss. An estimated 400,000 people lost their lives. The conflict displaced millions, both internally and as refugees in neighboring countries. Today, despite the 2018 peace deal, the situation remains precarious. The United Nations reports that as of last year, 2.3 million people were internally displaced, and another 2.3 million were refugees, primarily in Uganda, Sudan, Ethiopia, and Kenya. That's a staggering 4.6 million South Sudanese forced from their homes. On the humanitarian front, the figures are equally grim. The UN's 2024 Humanitarian Response Plan sought $1.8 billion to assist 6 million of the most vulnerable people. It was only 42% funded. This funding gap translates directly into reduced food rations, closed health clinics, and suspended protection services. The economic situation offers little relief. Inflation has been volatile, often soaring into triple digits, eroding savings and making basic goods unaffordable for ordinary citizens. This is the bleak landscape into which Kenya is stepping with its Tumaini initiative. The success of any peace talks hinges on the credibility and leverage of the mediator. Kenya brings a mixed history to the table. On one hand, it has deep ties to South Sudan. It was a key player in the Intergovernmental Authority on Development, or IGAD, mediation that produced the 2018 agreement. Nairobi has also been a safe haven for South Sudanese political elites, business people, and refugees for decades. This creates intimate knowledge of the players and the issues. President William Ruto has personally invested diplomatic capital in this effort, positioning himself as a modern, pragmatic leader capable of solving African problems. His administration has argued that a fresh, focused approach led by a single committed mediator, Kenya, is more effective than the broader, sometimes unwieldy IGAD process. On the other hand, Kenya's role is not without controversy. Some within South Sudan and the region view Kenya with suspicion, accusing it of favoring certain factions or pursuing its own economic interests above an impartial peace. The shadow of the 2018 agreement looms large. While Kenya helped forge it, its subsequent implementation has been poor. Critics ask, what will be different this time? Is Kenya offering new substance or just a new process? The initiative's framework suggests a focus on inclusivity, promising to bring in voices beyond the main armed parties, including women's groups, youth representatives, and religious leaders. If implemented genuinely, this could address a major flaw of past agreements, which were often elite pacts that ignored broader societal grievances. Let's now debate the core question: can this initiative succeed? We'll present two perspectives. First, the case for optimism. Supporters point to several factors. One, the stark reality on the ground. The parties may finally be feeling enough pain, military stalemate, economic pressure, donor fatigue to make hard compromises. Two, Kenya's direct, high-level engagement. President Ruto's personal involvement signals seriousness and can apply political pressure that lower-level diplomats cannot. 3. The focused format. A dedicated 4-week session, away from the daily distractions of Juba, could foster the concentrated negotiation needed. 4. The regional and international backdrop. There is a growing consensus that the status quo is unsustainable. Key powers, including the United States under President Donald Trump and regional actors, may be willing to back a credible new push with both incentives and consequences. The Tumaini document itself, by acknowledging previous failures, builds a foundation of honesty that past talks sometimes lacked. Now the case for skepticism. Opponents highlight deep-seated obstacles. First, trust between the principal leaders, Salva Kiir and Riek Machar, remains virtually non-existent. Their factions have repeatedly failed to integrate forces, a cornerstone of the security arrangement. Second, the conflict has become increasingly fragmented. While the main war was between Kiir's and Machar's forces, numerous other armed groups and community militias now operate, making a comprehensive deal more complex. Third, the political economy of war. For some elites, conflict is profitable, controlling access to oil, land, and smuggling routes. Peace threatens these revenue streams. Fourth, the tight timeline. Can issues like federalism, wealth sharing, and a truth commission, which have bedeviled South Sudan for years, be resolved in just 4 weeks? Or will the result be a rushed, superficial agreement that collapses under its own weight? Finally, there is the question of enforcement. The 2018 agreement had robust regional and international guarantees, yet violations continued with little consequence. What new mechanism will the Tumaini initiative propose to ensure compliance? The regional context adds another layer of complexity. Kenya's diplomatic offensive comes amid other significant tensions. Just this week, we've seen a major diplomatic rupture between South Africa and Israel, with both countries expelling each other's senior envoys. While geographically distant, this incident underscores a volatile global environment where traditional alliances are straining and multilateral diplomacy is under pressure. For Kenya, navigating South Sudan's peace process requires not only managing the parties in Juba, but also coordinating with a diverse set of international partners who may have competing priorities. The United States, China, the European Union, and neighboring Uganda, Sudan, and Ethiopia all have significant stakes. Aligning these actors behind a single Kenyan-led plan will be a formidable task in itself. Furthermore, Kenya's resources are finite. The government will need to dedicate significant diplomatic, logistical, and potentially financial resources to shepherd this process, all while managing domestic challenges. The political opposition may question the cost and focus of such an external venture. President Ruto will need to demonstrate clear, tangible benefits for Kenya to maintain domestic support for this high-profile mediation role. Looking ahead to February 9th, what are the key benchmarks for success? In the first week, observers will watch for the full and credible participation of all invited parties. Any major boycotts would be an early red flag. By the end of week 2, The formation of clear technical committees to tackle specific issues, security, governance, justice, would signal serious work is underway. Week 3 should see the emergence of draft provisions on the most contentious points. And by the 4-week deadline, the delivery of a signed National Consensus Charter would, of course, be the headline success. But even a signed document is just the beginning. The true test will be in its implementation. Will it have clear, sequenced milestones? Will it establish a credible, independent monitoring body with real authority? And crucially, will it outline specific consequences for non-compliance? Without these elements, the Tumaini initiative risks becoming another document filed away, another promise broken to the people of South Sudan. For the average South Sudanese citizen, weary after over a decade of violence and instability, the announcement of yet more talks likely brings a weary mix of hope and cynicism. Their priorities are immediate, safety, food, and the chance to return home. Any agreement that does not quickly translate into improved security and tangible services in their communities will be seen as irrelevant. This is the ultimate accountability for the Tumaini initiative. It must connect high-level politics in a conference room to the reality on the ground in places like Bentiu, Malakal, and Yei. In conclusion, Kenya's brokering of the February 9th talks is a bold and necessary gamble. It recognizes that the current path in South Sudan leads nowhere good. The Tumaini initiative offers a structured, time-bound attempt to change course. The arguments for skepticism are powerful, rooted in a history of disappointment and the profound difficulty of the issues. Yet the arguments for a cautious optimism are also valid, grounded in the undeniable urgency of the moment and Kenya's potential to wield its influence in a focused way. The coming month will be a critical test of regional diplomacy, political will, and the enduring desire for peace in the world's youngest nation. The eyes of the region and the world will be on Nairobi and Juba. We will be following every development closely. For Kenya News Update today, this has been a deep dive into the high-stakes peace talks for South Sudan. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to Kenya News Update today.